From the streets of Los Santos to the hills of Vinewood, Franklin Clinton was supposed to be the next big thing. A young hustler, tired of dead-end gang life, looking for a way out. Smart, skilled, and ambitious. He had all the makings of a legend. But as the story of GTA 5 unfolds, something strange happens. While Michael gets wrapped up in his messy family drama, and Trevor steals the spotlight with his chaotic insanity, Franklin's journey starts to feel less important. He starts as a man chasing the dream, but by the end, was he really anything more than a sidekick? Today, we're breaking down Franklin's story, where it shined, where it fell flat, and whether Rockstar wasted his potential in GTA 5. I mean, think about it. He had all the right ingredients to be one of the best protagonists in GTA history. A young hustler from the streets, ambitious but stuck in the same cycle of crime, looking for something bigger. He had that classic rags to riches storyline set up perfectly. But here's the problem. Somewhere along the way, it feels like Franklin's character arc just stalls. Instead of becoming the kingpin of Los Santos or the next CJ, he kinda ends up playing sidekick in Michael and Trevor's drama. So, was Franklin really given the development he deserved? Or did Rockstar drop the ball on what could have been one of the greatest GTA characters ever? Today we're breaking it all down. Let's get into it. Now, let's talk about Franklin's setup. Because on paper, he had everything needed to be an incredible protagonist. We meet him as a young hustler, trying to escape the cycle of gang life. He's smarter than the people around him, more ambitious, and he doesn't want to end up like the guys on the block who are either dead or in jail. That's a solid foundation for a GTA protagonist, right? In a way, Franklin felt like Rockstar's attempt at a modern-day CJ. But there's a big difference. CJ's story in San Andreas was personal. He came back to Grove Street because of family. He had deep roots in that world. His journey felt emotional, like he was constantly being pulled back in while trying to move forward. Franklin, on the other hand, his connection to Los Santos isn't as strong. He doesn't seem to care much about the families or the people he grew up with. He just wants out. And while that's an interesting angle, Rockstar never really lets it go anywhere. Think about the possibilities. Franklin could have built a real empire, starting small and becoming a major player in the city's crime world. He could have had deeper gang-related storylines, maybe even taking over the families and leading them in a new direction. Or maybe he could have transitioned into being a legit business mogul, using his street smarts to make real money in a way CJ never could. But instead, Franklin's story kind of plateaus. He gets rich, yeah, but does he ever really change? Does he ever take control of his own fate? It feels like Rockstar had the perfect setup but just didn't follow through. As the story progresses, it becomes clear that Rockstar wasn't as invested in his journey as they were in Michael and Trevor's. Think about it. Almost all of Franklin's biggest moments in the game are tied to their conflicts, not his own. Michael is dealing with his broken family, his past catching up to him, and his own midlife crisis. Trevor's on this chaotic path of revenge, fueled by betrayal and his insane personality. But Franklin? What's his biggest struggle? He doesn't really have one. And the worst part? Franklin barely has any personal stakes. Michael has his family, Trevor has his vendetta, but what does Franklin really care about? Lamar? Sure, but even that relationship gets pushed to the side. By the time we reach the finale, it becomes painfully obvious. Franklin isn't in control of his own destiny. Instead of making a decision based on his journey, he's just following orders. Devin Weston tells him to kill Michael. Steve Haynes tells him to kill Trevor. And what does Franklin do? He listens. Rockstar had a chance to give Franklin a defining moment, to finally let him take charge of his own fate. But instead, they make him a hitman for other people's agendas. So, at this point, we have to ask, was Franklin ever really meant to be a main protagonist? Or was he just there to bridge the gap between Michael and Trevor's war? One of the biggest issues with Franklin's story is the complete lack of a strong personal arc. When we first meet him, he's a young hustler, eager to escape the gang life and make something of himself. That's a solid starting point. But the problem? Rockstar never really gives him anything to grow from. Look at his relationships. Lamar, his best friend, the dude who's been with him from day one, barely plays a role in Franklin's life after the first act. There's no moment where Franklin has to make a tough choice between his new lifestyle and his old friendships. No confrontation where Lamar forces him to question if he really made it out or just became another pawn in a bigger game. And then there's Tanisha. She ditches Franklin early on because she wants a real man with a real job, whatever that means. But even after Franklin gets rich and buys a mansion, there's no real closure. She just pops up in the ending, married to a doctor, and that's it. No real emotional weight, no last conversation, nothing. So what is Franklin's arc? He goes from being broke to being rich, but then what? What does he do with that wealth? CJ fought for his family and his hood. Nico struggled with the morality of his choices. Tommy Vercetti built an empire. Franklin? He just runs more missions for Lester. And let's not forget the rumors about the Cut Casino, DLC. Early leaks suggested Franklin was supposed to have a bigger role in Los Santos' underworld. Maybe this was Rockstar's original plan for him, a chance to really establish himself as a power player. But instead, when the Diamond Casino update dropped, Franklin was nowhere to be seen. It really makes you wonder, was Franklin's story always meant to be this shallow? Or did Rockstar just stop caring halfway through? It took almost a decade, but Rockstar finally gave Franklin some respect, just not in the main game. In 2021, the Contract DLC for GTA Online brought Franklin back in a big way. He's no longer just Michael's sidekick or Trevor's backup. He's a high-level fixer running the agency, working with celebrities like Dr. Dre, and finally making big moves in Los Santos. And look, I won't lie, it was great seeing Franklin in a position of power. He's not just doing other people's dirty work anymore. He's the boss now. He's got a successful business, a professional team, and actual control over his life. But here's the problem. This is the arc he should have had in GTA 5. Imagine if instead of just following orders, Franklin had built something like the agency during the main story. If he had real conflicts, real ambition, real stakes. But instead, Rockstar waited nearly 10 years to give him the depth and authority he always deserved. The contract gave us a glimpse of what Franklin could have been. So, what could Rockstar have done differently? How could they have made Franklin's story actually feel like a main protagonist's journey? First off, give him more missions that focus on his growth as a leader. Instead of just taking orders from Michael, Trevor, and Lester, Franklin should have been building something of his own. Maybe he starts small, taking over some local hustles, expanding his crew, moving up the chain. Over time, he could have become a true crime boss rather than just another errand boy. Speaking of crime, why not expand his gang connections? Franklin comes from the streets, but GTA 5 barely explores that world. Imagine if Rockstar had given us more gang-related missions, where Franklin has to balance loyalty to his old neighborhood with his desire to go legit. Maybe he gets caught up in a power struggle between the families and the Ballas, forcing him to make tough choices about who he wants to be. And what about a real betrayal twist? Picture this. Lamar, Franklin's best friend since day one, starts feeling abandoned as Franklin climbs the ranks. Maybe he makes a desperate move against Franklin, forcing the player to deal with the emotional fallout. Do you take him out? Do you try to fix things? A moment like that would have added real drama and stakes. Or better yet, bring Franklin's past back to haunt him. Maybe an old rival comes back, someone from his repo days, or even someone tied to his gang life. Instead of being a blank slate, Franklin could have had unfinished business that forced him to make hard choices. The pieces were right there. Rockstar just never put them together. And that's the biggest disappointment. Franklin could have been so much more than just the guy who drives good. He could have had an actual journey, one where he starts as a small-time hustler and ends as a true kingpin. Instead, Rockstar gave us a character with all the potential in the world and did almost nothing with it. All right, let's be real. Rockstar clearly had favorites in GTA 5, and Franklin wasn't one of them. Michael and Trevor, they got everything. Michael's family drama wasn't just part of his story, it was damn near half the game. We had missions about his failing marriage, his bratty kids, therapy sessions, yoga for crying out loud. And even outside the main story, Michael had tons of personal moments and interactions. Trevor? Rockstar went all in on his character. He has a rich backstory with Brad, beef with the Lost MC, and even ties to multiple cities. His personality is larger than life, and Rockstar made sure we never forgot that. But Franklin barely has any meaningful relationships. His only real connection is Lamar, and Rockstar treats Lamar like a damn punchline. He's the goofy best friend, the guy who's always stuck in the same place, never taken seriously. And once Franklin makes it, Lamar practically disappears from the story. So yeah, let's not pretend Rockstar gave all three protagonists equal love. Michael and Trevor got depth, drama, and full arcs. Franklin? He got some repo jobs, a mansion, and an invite to Lester's schemes. At this point, it's obvious. Rockstar never cared about Franklin as much as they did the other two. And that's probably the biggest missed opportunity of GTA 5.